On February 4th, 1939, Connie Sommerlad was brutally murdered, and her brother was left for dead in their family farmhouse in rural Tenterfield. This shocking crime sent ripples through the close-knit community, especially since the attacker was a local man employed by the Sommerlads. The incident had significant political implications, as Connie was the niece of a prominent state politician and a local media baron. Born in 1914 in New South Wales, situated at the junction of the New England and Bruxner highways. John Trevor Kelly, the son and youngest child of Michael Kelly, and Johanna, with her older sister, Maureen, have moved to Lismore soon after John's birth. The family lived at 71 Union Street in South Lismore, and from the early 1920s, John's father worked as a livestock agent for Barnes's Bacon Co. On the 3rd of March 1927, Kelly's older sister, Maureen, died at her parents' residence in Union Street at the age 17. By 1934, Kelly was a 20-year-old with a passion for cars and a knack for fixing them. After months of searching, he finally landed a job as a motor mechanic in a bustling garage in Lismore. He quickly honed his skills, learning everything from basic repairs to complex engine overhauls. As he gained experience, he also developed a love for driving. The rush of speed and the roar of the engine became intoxicating. Whenever cars were brought in for repairs, Kelly couldn't resist the urge to take them for a spin. He would hop into the driver's seat, rev the engine, and take off down the street, feeling the wind in his hair. However, his driving style was anything but cautious. Kelly drove recklessly, weaving through traffic and taking sharp corners, exhilarated by the thrill. The other mechanics often watched in disbelief. They warned him about the dangers, but he was captivating to resist. On the evening of December 26, 1934, Kelly was driving through Coraki, a small town near Lismore. The sun had just set, and it was getting dark. As he drove along the quiet streets, he suddenly saw flashing lights in his rearview mirror. A police car was signaling him to pull over. Kelly stopped the car and rolled down the window. A police officer approached, looking serious. "Do you know why I stopped you?" the officer asked. Kelly glanced at the dark road ahead and replied, "I didn't have my headlights on. They need to be fixed." Trying to avoid trouble, Kelly quickly gave the officer a false name: John Stewart. He also claimed that his driver's license was at home, hoping this would satisfy the policeman. The officer frowned but took down his information anyway. After a brief chat, the officer let him go with a warning. Kelly got back into his car, relieved. He turned on the headlights, which surprisingly worked, and drove away into the night. However, the story didn't end there. The police conducted further inquiries after Kelly's departure and discovered that his real name was John Trevor Kelly. They also found out that he had a history of reckless driving and was not supposed to be on the road without proper license plates. He was supposed to appear at the court in February 1935. At the Coraki Police Court on that day, Kelly did not appear but sent a letter pleading guilty of the charges of driving without lights and giving a false name. He was fined £2 with 8 shillings costs for each offence. At about 10 minutes after 10 o'clock at night, on the 19th of January, 1935, Kelly went to the Royal Hotel in Lismore and asked the licensee, Charles Spillane, for a drink. As it was after hours and Kelly was known to be a local, Spillane refused to serve him. While the publican was distracted, Kelly opened the bar door and took 14 shillings off the ledge of the till. He was seen, and Spillane detained the young man and called the police. 2 days later, Kelly faced the police magistrate. In outlining the details of the case, Constable Hunt commented that Kelly was a respectable young man. He was fined £1 in default 2 days imprisonment for being on licensed premises after hours and £3 on the charge of stealing the money. in default 6 days imprisonment. In view of Kelly's previous good character, the police magistrate allowed him a month to pay the fines. Kelly was regarded as a respectable lad, but since then he had been going downhill. The young man was addicted to drink and associated with young men of the larrikin type. His parents were regarded as highly respected members of the Lismore community and had done everything in their power to put him on the right road. On 22nd February 1936, Kelly was stopped by the police while driving a motor lorry in Lismore. When asked for his license, he said it had expired in November and he had misplaced the renewal notice and did not bother about it. He was fined £1 with 8 shillings costs. Shortly after midnight on the 16th of May, 1936, Kelly was stopped by the Lismore police and was found to be under the influence of alcohol. A leather overcoat was found in the car, which had been reported as stolen from the Federalette Hall earlier in the evening. A day or so later, he stole a blank cheque from a chequebook belonging to the partnership of Black & Black, garage proprietors in Lismore. On May 18th, he falsely claimed to Mervyn Jones, a barman at the Hotel Gollan, that the cheque was a genuine order for £20 10 shillings, purporting to be signed by J. Black. On 21st May 1936, Kelly appeared before the Lismore Police Court, charged with fraudulently passing the cheque 3 days earlier and obtaining drinks to the value of 5 shillings and £20 and 5 shillings in cash. He was remanded to a later date to face charges from May 16th, with bail set at £20, with sureties of a like amount. The 4 charges were dealt with on May 25th. He pleaded guilty to each charge. His solicitor, Thomas Rummery, said that his client's lapse was due to unemployment. His inability to obtain work had caused fits of despondency, during which he drank heavily. Rummery claimed it was only while under the influence of liquor that he was guilty of dishonesty. During the hearing, Mr. Starkey, a local contractor, offered to give Kelly permanent employment. The police magistrate, Henry Hawkins, said that he did not think the defendant was worthy of much consideration, but that he did not feel disposed to put the jail brand on him at present. He imposed fines amounting to £11, 15 shillings, and bound Kelly to a bond of £40, with sureties of a like amount, to be of good behaviour for 2 years, in default, imprisonment for 3 months. Hawkins also strongly advised Kelly to undertake not to drink liquor. On 22nd February 1937, Kelly fraudulently passed a cheque to a storekeeper in Lismore, obtaining cigarettes and cash. Soon afterwards, he was arrested in Coolangatta, supposedly heading for North Queensland. After appearing in the Coolangatta Police Court, Kelly was returned to Lismore. On March 8th, he again faced Police Magistrate Hawkins in the Lismore Police Court, where it was revealed that in recent months Kelly had passed several valueless cheques in the district, which his father had made good for his son to avoid trouble. Hawkins reminded Kelly, "Last time you were here, I gave you an opportunity to show that you had manhood enough to stick to your father and behave yourself for 2 years. The police magistrate told him, "You have made a very fine start towards a career of crime," before sentencing the young man to 14 days imprisonment with hard labour to be served at Lismore. At the Lismore Quarter Sessions in April 1937, Kelly was charged with abduction, accused of having fraudulently allured a girl, aged 14 years and 5 months, from out of the possession of and against the will of her mother, with intent to commit a serious offence. He was also charged with carnal knowledge of the girl. Kelly was remanded on bail of £80 to stand trial at the next sitting of the court. At the following quarter sessions in Lismore in August 1937, Kelly failed to appear to answer the charges. A warrant was issued for his arrest. He subsequently appeared before Judge Sheridan and was remanded without bail to answer the charges at the Lismore sittings of the Supreme Court in September. On 23rd September 1937, Kelly was found guilty of abduction and not guilty of the second charge of carnal knowledge. Kelly's defense counsel claimed that his client's irresponsible tendencies had only developed after his motor accident in 1934, and it might possibly benefit him if he were placed under medical observation. The following day, a sentence of 18 months' imprisonment was imposed on Kelly by Justice Halls Rogers. The judge recommended that he serve the sentence on a prison farm and that the prisoner be placed under medical observation to ascertain if the injuries he sustained in a motor accident some time ago had had any permanent mental effect. During his incarceration, towards the end of 1937, Kelly received treatment at Long Bay Penitentiary in Sydney for a venereal disorder. He got out of the prison farm in November 1938. After that, he walked around looking for a job, but it was hard to find one. Fortunately, he got hired by Stanley Huckabee on December 29th. Soon after, he started working for Eric Sommerlad at Hillcrest Farm, which was a dairy and orchard farm about 4.5 miles from Tenterfield on Warwick Road. Among 19th-century settlers in the Dundee area north of Glen Innes, there were a number of German families. The men were originally brought to work as labourers on nearby pastoral properties. A number became free selectors. Some named their properties after their hometowns and districts in Germany. John Sommerlad, Eric's grandfather, is credited with establishing the first commercial orchard in the district. He initially purchased a block of land and planted an orchard and market garden, and then acquired a property, Spring Valley, outside town, which he developed into an orchard and nursery. These farm and the properties have been passed on to generation, and Eric and his siblings were in charge. The Sommerlads were one of the biggest and respectable families. It was later reported that Eric considered Kelly to be a good worker on the farm and easy to get on with. During his employment at Hillcrest, Kelly had his meals at the house and slept on the veranda. On Saturday morning, 4th February 1939, Miss Dulcie Sommerlad discovered the body of her 35-year-old sister, Marjorie Constance Sommerlad, known to the family as Connie, at her home at Hillcrest. Miss Sommerlad's body, dressed in her night attire, was lying in the hallway near the entrance to her bedroom, her head fearfully battered. Dulcie Sommerlad then discovered her brother Eric unconscious in his bed on the veranda. He was bleeding from wounds in his head and neck, including a deep gash in the back of his head. Dulcie Sommerlad was a nurse living at Coonabarabran. She had been visiting her mother and other family members at Glen Innes before travelling by train to Tenterfield to stay with her older sister and brother. She continued her journey to the farm by car, where the shocking tragedy was revealed. She had made the journey many times before and was usually a keen window watcher, but this time she saw nothing, nor did she smell the soot flying through the open window in the corridor. Her mind was already at the farm, thinking of her older sister Connie and younger brother Eric. She knew it was apple season and they'd probably be busy, but she'd be happy to pitch in and help for a day or two. It would be a welcome change from the hospital. When police attended the scene, they found a blood-stained axe and discovered that a Studebaker utility truck belonging to Eric Sommerlad was missing. Police suspected the killer was the farmhand, John Trevor Kelly. His description and details of the utility truck were sent to police stations in New South Wales and southern Queensland. That evening, detectives in Brisbane found the green Studebaker truck in a garage where it was being repaired. They also talked to a taxi driver who had picked up the truck's driver, a man who matched the description of Jack Kelly, the Hillcrest employee. Early Sunday morning, detectives arrested John Trevor Kelly in a room at Astor Terrace in Spring Hill, a suburb of Brisbane, for questioning. At the Brisbane Criminal Investigation Branch, Kelly confessed to the murder. He told detectives that he and Eric Sommerlad went to Tenterfield on Friday evening, February 3rd. They planned to meet at midnight to go back to Hillcrest together, but Kelly said Sommerlad didn't show up, so he rented a car to get back to the farm. When he arrived, Sommerlad told him he was fired for not doing his job well because of drinking. Kelly said this made him angry. He went outside, grabbed an axe, and struck Eric, who was lying on his bed on the porch. Then he heard Eric's sister coming from her room and hit her with the back of the axe near the dining room door. Kelly was returned to Tenterfield in police custody, where he gave a different version of the events to Detective Sergeant Snowden of Lismore. He stumbles into her room without knocking and went towards her bed. Connie draws back into pillows resting against her bedhead, her eyes filling with fear. He told her, "You look petty." She said, "Go, or I'll call Eric. Just a little kiss, a thanks for the spirin." "Thanks," she says abruptly, her voice rising. "Now go." As he comes closer, she withdraws more deeply into her pillows. "Come on, sweetie, it'll do you good." "Go away." "Eric, Eric, help." Her screams vibrate from the walls. He grabs her in his arms, wrenching her from the pillows. She fights, pushing with all her might against his taut body. An absurd picture of a dragon blowing fire from its nostrils flashes into her mind. She screamed for help, and a hand fiercely punches into her face, bruising and breaking the surface of her nose, her lips, her cheeks, stinging her eyes. Her dentures fly from her mouth and onto the floor. The rough hand clamps her mouth. Another hand pulls wildly at her nightdress, tearing the thin fabric. Alcoholic fumes spray her face and the pillows. She hammers her clenched fists into his face. He retaliates. He runs his sharp nails across her neck and right down her arms. Blood flows. "Eric!" She screams as her mouth is slapped shut. A sudden rush of adrenaline gives her the strength to raise her legs and push violently against his inebriated body. He reels backwards, falling to the ground with a tremendous crash. He is furious. His face turns an ugly red as a burst of fiery breath erupts from his opened mouth. His eyes are smoldering in an impassioned frenzy. "I'll fix you!" he yells. Angrily, he picks himself up, knocking heavily against both the wardrobe and bedside table. The oil lamp crashes to the floor, glass splintering in all directions. He crushes Connie's dentures underfoot as he goes charging off down the hallway, out the side door. He misses the bottom step as he staggers out into the yard towards the woodpile. The axe stands in its customary place, wedged tightly in the chopping block. He grabs it. Connie lies on her dishevelled bed, sobbing, bleeding. Paralyzed by fear, she neither moves nor calls again for help. Through heavy, largely silent sobs, she is praying that her attacker has left. But then she hears heavy footsteps echoing up the hallway. Adrenaline invades her frozen limbs. She leaps from the bed. Her shredded nightdress falls easily to the floor, and she wraps herself in a light green gown. Terrified, she stumbles towards the side veranda to rouse Eric. Her attacker bursts into the hallway, wielding the axe. She turns, running towards the door into the dining room. With the axe held high, he lurches after her. At his first swipe, the blade misses her and digs deeply into the wall of the passageway. Screams leap from her throat, piercing, terrified screams. Behind her, with manic strength, he raises the axe high above her head. Smash! The axe penetrates deeply, dividing her skull. Cursing wildly, he angrily wrenches it free and brings it down again with thunderous intensity. Smash! Her neck opens, with a gash that runs deep into her chest. In quick succession, blows destroy an eye, annihilate an ear. Powerful fountains of blood spray the ceiling, the walls, the carpet, and her attacker. She falls backwards, faceless, as he brings down the axe for the last time. Removing her gold ring with its cluster of diamonds, he leaves her, lifeless, brutally butchered. Blood pours from her body's gaping wounds. The only noises he can hear are his madly thumping heart and his heavy, cumbersome feet. An inquest into the death of Marjorie Constance Sommerlad was held at Tenterfield over 2 days on the 8th and 9th of March, 1939. The coroner, Edgar Jennings, returned a finding that Miss Sommerlad died from the effects of wounds caused by blows feloniously and maliciously inflicted by Kelly. He ordered Kelly's committal to the state penitentiary at Long Bay, in the Sydney suburb of Malabar, to await trial. Soon the news reached their uncle, Ernest Sommerlad, and this when the whole case turned political. Their uncle, who was a foundation member of the Country Party and elected to the New South Wales Legislative Council in 1932. There would be profound political repercussions, for his victim was the niece of a powerful state politician and local media baron. But while the political heavyweight was totally opposed to capital punishment on religious and moral grounds, his conservative political allies in the state parliament acted as though they owed him one and were determined to wreak revenge against the wretched Kelly for his abominable act, despite the fact the state had consciously stopped executing people more than a year earlier. Kelly was tried on May 2nd and 3rd, 1939, before Justice Halls-Rogers at the Supreme Court in Armidale. He pleaded not guilty. His defense lawyer, Wilfred McMinn, argued that Kelly was insane when he committed the crime. The prosecution presented medical witnesses who concluded that, although Kelly had below-average intelligence, there was no evidence of any mental disorder. McMinn urged the jury to consider how alcohol affected someone with Kelly's limited mental capacity, claiming that it impaired his ability to understand his actions. Eric Sommerlad, who had been released from the hospital, testified at the trial. He explained that on February 3rd, he drove Kelly to Tenterfield and planned to meet him again at 11 p.m. After waiting until 11:45 and not seeing Kelly, he drove home, spoke with his sister for half an hour, and then went to bed. He couldn't remember anything else until he woke up in the hospital. The jury found Kelly guilty, and Justice Halls-Rogers remarked that the crime was a murder of extraordinary ferocity, with no mitigating circumstances. When asked if he had anything to say before sentencing, Kelly replied, "No, only that I am sorry for what happened." Kelly later appealed his conviction and death sentence to the Court of Criminal Appeal in Sydney on May 26, 1939. His lawyer argued that the murder could only have been committed by someone insane. However, Chief Justice Jordan stated that while the crime was brutal, there was no indication that Kelly was insane at the time. Kelly's defense team sought to appeal to the High Court, claiming the evidence strongly supported his insanity and that the jury's verdict was unreasonable. On August 3rd, the High Court unanimously denied Kelly's request to appeal. Justice Stark remarked that the case had no merit and was hopeless, expressing surprise that the state funded Kelly's appeal. On August 9th, 1939, the New South Wales Executive Council approved the state cabinet's recommendation that Kelly be hanged on August 24th. The cabinet, led by Premier Alexander Mair, based its decision on a transcript of the evidence, the judge's report, and various medical reports and petitions. On August 12, 1939, Samuel Rosenberg, the organizing secretary of the Howard Prison Reform League, began a fast to raise awareness for his group's campaign to abolish the death penalty. For 13 days leading up to Kelly's execution, he consumed only spinach, water, and orange juice, while smoking innumerable cigarettes. After the government decided to proceed with the execution, Mick Kelly wrote to the Brisbane Truth newspaper, comparing his son's case to other recent crimes that had received commuted sentences. He argued that his son was in a frenzy from drink at the time of the crime and pleaded, "Praying that you will do all in your power to prevent the awful fate assigned to my boy, as there has been enough sorrow to both families already." John Trevor Kelly, about 24 years old, was hanged at Long Bay Penitentiary just after 8 o'clock on the morning of August 24, 1939. Samuel Rosenberg ended his 13-day fast after Kelly was executed, having lost 13 pounds. Rosenberg vowed that the campaign to abolish the death penalty will go on, and noted that the public becomes interested in reform only when a man is to be hanged. Kelly was the last person to be executed in New South Wales. Although capital punishment remained an option until 1955, after Kelly's execution, subsequent governments automatically commuted death sentences to prison terms. In 1955, with the Labour Party in control of both houses of the state parliament, New South Wales abolished the death penalty for crimes like murder and rape, while treason and piracy remained capital offences until 1985. Keeping this secret affected the entire family, even into the current generation. When the truth began to surface in the 1970s, even now, many family records remain missing, with their names changed and most documents deleted from archives.